scholars, my elders, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we begin, I've been requested by our esteemed host that we begin by remembering with a Surah Fatiha all our scholars who have passed away, those of our brothers and sisters who have given their lives for the teachings, who have been killed for nothing other than gathering to remember Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So all the shuhada of our time and all our scholars, may Allah elevate their souls and let us recite one Surah Fatiha for their souls. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. All praises to Allah, the Creator of the universe and its Sustainer, the Provider of believers and non-believers. And may His choicest blessings be on the seal of His prophets, the last of His messengers and His holy progeny. And in particular, on this day, may His incessant blessings ever continue on that illustrious grandson of the Holy Prophet, on Abdullah Hussain salawatullahi alayhi. Let us begin by offering together, collectively, our humble condolences to that grieving mother, Bibi Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. And together offer our condolences to the chief of all the mourners, to the Imam of the time, to Imam Mahdi al-John Faraj salawatullahi alayhi, whose intercession we seek and we need, particularly for facing the challenges of our time. Our host has asked that we reflect upon the practical psychology within Dua-e-Kumail for our discussion today. And before we launch into that discussion, I would request that you join me in praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the shafa'a of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, through the wasila of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that He blesses this household and indeed all our households, and He enables us to live the teaching of Hussain alayhi salam. Because we need those teachings more so today than in previous times. Because the nature of the difficulties we are facing have become more pervasive and more subtle. Which means often we need to look more closely at what the problems are and how to deal with them. One of the major challenges we are facing in 21st century Britain as a Muslim community is the scourge of mental health difficulties, particularly depression. And when we look at the Islamic teachings, we see many aspects of our concepts and our practices that can help us. Let us use these teachings to be a shafa for us in this life, so that we may benefit with fidunya hasana, as well as being a blessing for the hereafter with wafil akhirati hasana. But in order for us to do that, we need to engage with the teachings once again. So the first question that arises is, how do we know that there is even such a thing as Islamic psychology? How do we know that these discussions about psychology and psychotherapy and self-analysis are even part of the Islamic teachings and not something we just get from modern media? Well, when we look at some of our earlier sources, the dua traditions, indeed even the psychology of salah from the Urafa, what we see is that not only is psychology part of Islam, psychology is the essence of Islam. Indeed, we remember the teaching that we teach our young children in madrasa. When we teach them about behavior, generally in akhlaq, when we go deeper, we see there's a distinction between external behavior, adab, and internal behavior, which is akhlaq, our practical psychology. We have scholars in the room that can guide us that the Holy Prophet, peace upon him, and his holy progeny, salawatullah alayhi, guided very clearly. And the hadith I'm about to cite is not from just a particular tradition. It's generic from across the Islamic Ummah. He said categorically, in terms of what is Islam about, what is the core of the teaching that we need to really hold on to? He said, إِنَّمَا بُوِثْتُ, surely, the purpose for which I have been sent. Well, you would think a sentence that begins like this, everyone would take note. He says, إِنَّمَا بُوِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The primary purpose for which I have been sent is the perfection of human character. Akhlaq is not just our interactions with other people. Akhlaq is far deeper than that. Akhlaq has at least 3 dimensions. Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others, and through those understandings, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of them work in isolation. And this is why we begin to understand that actually our thinking and our thinking about thinking, what today we call metacognition, is integral to Islam because it's integral to akhlaq. And the Holy Prophet, peace upon him, said that akhlaq is the primary purpose for which he came. Not the law, not Sharia. That doesn't mean it's not important, it is important, but what it means is that it is there to support a bigger purpose. It is like the skeleton that holds up the human. But the value of a human being is not just the bones. Now, I'm conscious we've got many accomplished medics in the room, and if there is an orthopedic surgeon, I do not mean to offend. But what I mean is that the skeletal structure is there for a greater purpose, to hold up the life-giving substance of us, so that the faculty that makes us human, our flesh and blood, is akin to the Islamic body, whereby the Sharia becomes our skeleton. It's important to abide by it so that we don't collapse in our structure. But the primary flesh and blood of Islam is akhlaq, particularly in the interpersonal and the inner aspect of akhlaq. The urafa, the spiritual mystics within our community, have been very clear about this. And our dua traditions have reiterated it. But lest there was any doubt about the integral nature of psychology to Islam, let me cite to you one of the greatest spiritual psychologists, one of the masters of psychology of religion that humanity has ever seen. And I do not say that because I'm lucky enough to be within the community of the Shia Ali alayhi salam, but because when people look at the work of this individual, they see the beauty of the spiritual psychology. Of course, I'm about to cite none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib sallallahu In the Diwan of Ali ibn Abi Talib, it is narrated that he gave a teaching. And this is a short stanza that is well known in the community, but I think we need to revisit it from the point of view of practical psychology, given that one of the big problems we face is mental health challenges, particularly for young people. If we look at the crisis in child and adolescent mental health, it is a growing problem. And of course made all the greater because our tools for addressing it are so limited. Whilst for the adult population, the large studies, the meta-analysis, have shown that we can prescribe medication to help, and those who can be prescribed should take that medication. But for young people, we often find the studies showing that chemical interventions are not as effective as we would hope. We need to look elsewhere. And elsewhere is psychotherapy and indeed spiritual practice. What does this master of spiritual practice say? He says, Dawa'uka fika wa ma tash'uru. He says, your remedy, Dawa'uka, is within you, but you do not perceive it. Wa ma tash'uru. وَدَاؤُكَ, and your sickness, مِنْكَ وَمَا تَنْظُرُ. Your sickness is within you. Notice the play between dawa'uka and da'uka. These are two sides of the same coin. He's clearly in the mental arena. He's not talking about a broken bone. He's talking about a broken heart. He's talking about a broken soul, a broken psyche, a nafs that is in need of healing. He continues, وَتَحْسَبُوا, and you presume, وَتَحْسَبُوا أَنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ, that you presume, is this in shock? You presume that you are an insignificant thing. As though we have been seduced by the world into thinking that somehow we are nothing. And today, when we look at some of the causes of mental health challenges, particularly for our young people, low self-esteem, lack of self-worth is a key part of this. Indeed, when we look at the pain and the tragedy of suicide among young people, one of the core factors, some say exacerbated by social media, one of the core factors that leads the young of this country to take their own lives is lack of self-worth. وَتَحْسَبُوا أَنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ. You presume that you are nothing, a small, insignificant thing. وَفِيكَ, but within you, أَنْتَوَى الْعَالُمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. However, within you is an entire great realm. He's talking about the realm of creation. وَأَنْتَ الْكِتَابُ الْمُبِينُ, and you are the evident book. الَّذِي بِأَحْرُفِهِ يَظْهَرُ الْمُضْمَرُ, by the letters of which, if we are an open book, there are letters, there's an alphabet, there are words. The letters of this book make the hidden manifest. Well, there are three questions that arise. Firstly, do we actually regard ourselves as something small and insignificant? Well, one of the first steps in psychotherapy is to look within at how do we relate to ourselves? What is our akhlaq to ourselves? And we remember in Dua-e-Kumail, Imam Ali alayhi salam warning, ظَلَمْتُ نَفْسِي, Jazakallah, I have been a tyrant upon myself. So maybe there's a clue there that we do regard ourselves as jirmun saghirun, as something insignificant. That's question one. Does this apply to me? And I'd be surprised if it doesn't apply to any of us. Indeed, I would be surprised if it didn't apply to all of us at some point in our lives. Second, do we believe that we are an evident book? And if so, how do we look? Well, the Quran, Surah Rum, guides us, saying, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, do not reflect upon themselves. That self-analysis becomes critical to the process of identifying whether there is a book. And the third aspect, am I literate enough to be able to read the book of within? This ahruhu, this idea, بِأَحْرُفِيهِ يَظْهَرُ الْمُضْمَرُ, that the letters of which make the hidden manifest. Am I skilled in being able to read and decipher those letters? When we teach our little children how to read, the teachers often call the first stage decoding. Decoding the letters, putting them together to be able to form meaning out of words and letters. Well, the more we look at the mental health situation of our community, indeed the country as a whole, the more, sadly, we're finding that we are unable to read the book that is within. Because we are not skilled, we are not literate in the tools of يَتَفَكَّرُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, of having consistent, diligent self-analysis. Yet, alhamdulillah, we are recipients of a great tool, a great set of mirrors that can help us understand what's going on. And that is dua. Dua is not something that is static. Often we are told that recite Dua-e-Kumail, it'll be good for you in the hereafter. Yes, that's true. But actually, the real benefit of dua, yes sir, is in the here and the now. You are a beneficiary of the dua before you even stand up. But how? What are the aspects of dua that can be brought to bear now? Now, with your permission, I'd like to do something quite dangerous. Indeed, something quite scary. But our host has given me a lot of latitude, and I intend to extend the full extent of the latitude you have given me. And one of the first is to take liberty with you. So I seek your forgiveness in advance. Because if we are to walk together, we need to join hands and move forward. And I want to go into dangerous territory. But territory that is a gold mine. But it's a dangerous gold mine. And the gold mine is this. I'd like each of us to think about a particular problem we're facing now. The more difficult, the deeper you will go into the gold mine, and the more you're likely to harvest. And indeed, if you've got too many to think about, narrow it to 2 or 3. If you've got nothing you can identify, well, either congratulations, because I've yet to meet a human being like this, or maybe we need to think more closely. Difficulties we're having in our own emotional state, with our health, with our relationships. But make it personal. Do not think about, the problem about the negotiations between the US and the Taliban. Yes, that's a problem. But it's not a problem we can solve today, here and now. I'm talking about harvesting the gold now. A direct problem. Nafsi. Zalamtu nafsi. Let us bring this problem squarely into focus. And with that focus, consider what teachings of Dua-e-Kumail can help us in dealing with this problem. So firstly, when we look at psychotherapy, and by the way, this discussion is not going to be chronological through the dua. As you've already seen, I'm quite happy to jump in 3/4 of the way with Zalamtu nafsi. This is a thematic analysis. And I'm only going to look at a couple of themes. But the more we look, the more actually we're finding that there are at least 10 points of connection between psychotherapy that's offered on the NHS, like cognitive behavioral therapy, and psychological concepts in Dua-e-Kumail. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through all 10. But I want to look at a few that I think are particularly powerful for the kind of problems our community faces. The first is about motivation and clarity of purpose. So this might seem really obvious, that yes, of course, intention and clarity of perspective is important, but actually most people don't have it. And I don't mean any disrespect, I'm just citing the data. When we look at experimental psychology, a lot of people go into things without clarity about what they're doing it for, including embarking upon therapy, for instance. You would think that if you're starting a 10-part course of cognitive behavior therapy, for example, you'd be clear that I'm doing this to benefit in such and such a way, but actually that's not the case. Many people, when they start a degree, they're not absolutely clear what they're doing it for. They're doing it because A, they want to leave home, or B, they want to have a year off after working so hard at A-levels, or C, they may be incredibly brilliant students and really want to excel in their field. Those I salute. The rest of us are people like me. And we need to be able to rethink and reimagine who we are and what we can be. And that is a work of imagination. Niyyah is about harnessing the power of our imagination. Permit me to look at Surah Maryam, which makes this clear, where Isa alayhi salam is talking about how it's not fitting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have human offspring. Bismillah, Surah 19 verse 35 says, وَمَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ أَنْ يَتَّخِذَ مِنْ وَلَدٍ. It's not appropriate for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have as a son. Subhanahu, glory to him. And this is the key operative term from a practical psychology point of view. It says, إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا, when he he intends something, when he wants to decree something, فَإِنَّمَا, surely he does, فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ, he says to it, kun fayakun, say and it is. Now the question arises, what is this lahu to which he says kun? What is this thing to which he says be? Because logically, it's not there yet. So into what void is he saying kun? That is niyyah. That is the power for إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا. When he, إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا is about when he intends something. That power of intention is what we have been given. So when we look in the Sharia, when we recite our salah, what is the first step in order to have a valid salah? It's niyyah. We've got not just madrasa teachers, we've got founders of madaris in our congregation. May Allah elevate their work, inshallah. They would be teaching their students, as our teachers taught us, that the beginning of salah is niyyah. What Isa alayhi salam is teaching is that the beginning of creation is niyyah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delegated to us the power of niyyah, He also delegated to us the power to create our reality. So when we want to embark upon something, let us never underestimate the power of niyyah. Therefore, when we look at the teachings of the Imam who we gather to mourn today, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in his Dua-e-Kumail, in the first verse, one of the things he asks for through Allah's rahmah is وَانْتَهِي بِنِيَّتِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ النِّيَّةِ. You take wantahi, so it flips. If you really want to understand the psychology of dua, the psychology of Quran, you need to unlock the grammar. When you unlock the grammar, the psychology reveals itself. Beginning the sentence with wantahi shifts the emphasis, the active emphasis, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to ourselves. He's saying, you take my intention to the best of intentions. Why? Because it's powerful. If we want to drive far, it helps to turn on the engine. But often, when we look at our vehicles, they're crawling along because we're pushing them. Life seems such a burden. Yet, we've been given the kind of engine that can make it effortless. Effortless, not because it's easy, but effortless because we have access to a greater power. The madhya that was just recited so beautifully reminds us of that. When Bibi Zainab alayhi salam salawatullahi alayhi, when she was taunted by the accursed Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in Kufa, when he discovered who she was and he said, what did you make of what Allah did to your family in Karbala? What was her response? Her response, of course we know well, it's inscribed in golden calligraphy as Ma ra'aytu, did not see illa jamila, other than the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is using the energy of niyyah, of intention, of perspective. What in psychotherapeutic terms we would call reframing. It's not about denying what's happening. She saw and she wept. It's not about denying the calamity. It's not about denying the abuse that is going on in our houses, the abuse that we're inflicting upon ourselves, the abuse we're inflicting upon others in our workplace, in our homes, upon our children, God forbid. It's about acknowledging it and saying it does not break me, because there is an aspect of me that is greater than what any of this can touch. We are reminded of the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam that we began with, that within us is a great spiritual text. Kabir is the word he used. So that reframing, using niyyah, is a key part of the Quranic teachings, of the akhlaq teachings, and the dua teachings. The beginning of Dua-e-Kumail makes that clear. He says, beginning, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Allahumma inni as'aluka birahmatika. I beseech you by your rahmah. برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء, that embraces all things. This is from Surah 7 verse 156. So it's both dua and Quran together. Why is that relevant? Two reasons. One, if we really want to have a strong niyyah, often our motivation is held back by feelings that, oh, I can't do it. We may have a niyyah of doing something difficult, learning Arabic, going to school, raising a family, earning a livelihood, whatever it might be. But that niyyah often collapses in the face of challenge, because we are trying to garner our own resources, which may be limited. We may be exhausted to begin with. But if we're tapping into a higher source, then all that internal narrative, what psychologists call rumination, you know, that voice that seldom says good things, but that is very vociferous and quite eloquent about saying bad things about ourselves to ourselves, as well as other people. It's an equal opportunities offender. It talks all the time, and it puts us down. It saps our energy. We're reminded that in the morning we're told to recite the 4 calls, and in Surah Nas it says, الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي الصُّدُورِ النَّاسِ, the one who whispers into the hearts of people. The khannas, the true shaitan within our psychology. The urafa, when they analyze, they say just like a garden often has irrigation underneath that result in beautiful flowers, so too with negative thoughts. When negative thoughts come to our consciousness, often they are fueled by subconscious narratives that are deeply pernicious. And the cure is simple. The antidote to darkness is light. Even if that light is a 5-year-old little girl, the light of Sakina alayhi salam was greater than the darkness of Shimon when he came to rob her of her earrings. Why? Because today we see the light, even if it is a candle. So when we are forming our intention, Imam Ali alayhi salam begins by accessing Allah's rahmah, so that no matter what we are told that, oh, you're not good enough, you want to do well in maths but you just failed, you want to do well in the world but you are a failure because everybody has said so. In books of motivation we read that Michael Jordan, the great basketball player, the NBA legend, actually didn't make it to his school basketball team. But what he did was stay back and practice. And he worked at it. He had a clear niyyah. Now imagine if we form a niyyah of achieving proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through dua, through salah, and shaitan says, oh, but you remember that sin you did yesterday, and the sin you did yesterday. So he creates these ditches for us, we fall in them, then he says, look, you're in that ditch. How can you possibly hope to rise? But Imam Ali alayhi salam gives an antidote to that cutting short of niyyah by strengthening our niyyah, by attaching it to Allah's rahmah. Because when we look at rahmah, the texts of the urafa, for example, Sayyid Musa Tabatabai, in his analysis of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, when he looks at Rahman, he equates it and differentiating it to Rahim. Rahman is the kind of mercy that is unconditional. And psychologically that's important, we'll come back in a moment. It's like the rain that falls on everyone and everything. It falls on the sinner and the pious the same. Rahim is the special bounty for the believer who, through his or her faith, holds out a cup and the water gathers so we can take a sip. But the rain falls on everyone. But Imam Ali alayhi salam is not beseeching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the attribute of Rahim. No, it's more powerful than that. He is accessing through Rahman, which is unconditional. So when the negative thought comes in, remember the problem we were supposed to bring to our minds. Addressing that, often we feel defeated. What psychologists in the new field of positive psychology, when they look at what keeps people locked in depression, one of the things they describe, one of the behavior patterns they describe, is called learned helplessness, where we've had so many difficulties that even when a solution is opened up to us, we don't take it. We're not able to see that the door has opened. We don't regard ourselves as able to free ourselves. What Imam Ali alayhi salam is doing at the very outset of this dua, because the intention is very high. So the greater the ambition, the stronger the intention is required. And that's why it's important to inoculate, to provide a vaccine for this niyyah, to make it strong. And by tapping into rahmah, he is counteracting all the rumination going on in our heads. That's point one. Point two is the importance of companionship in the journey. So often with this problem, you may have a sense of loneliness about it. It's just so big and I'm all alone. But loneliness is an illusion, often created by the khannas, through the waswasa. Because neither have we ever been, nor are we, nor can we ever be alone. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has repeatedly said in the Holy Quran that He is closer, akrab, to us than our jugular vein, even closer. But we need to view it. When the person calls to me, إِذَا دَعَي دَعَانِي, when the person calls me, this idea of da'a, of the calling, is also about our mindfulness. And when we look at secular interventions for depression, like mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, this becoming present and becoming aware of what we need, this presence, what in the Islamic tradition is called dhikr, is incredibly powerful. And the Imam alayhi salam uses that. He says, Allahumma inni ataqarrabu ilayka bi dhikrik. Oh Allah, I seek closeness to you through your dhikr. Now this ataqarrabu is not just a theological idea. It has a reality to it. Because when we are close to Allah, we are in the present moment. We cannot be close to Allah in the past, and we cannot be close to Him in the future, because neither are we in the past, nor are we in the future. We only truly exist in the present moment. So the notion of qurbatan ilallah is conditioned upon presence in the moment, what today we call mindfulness. And how does he access that? Through dhikr, ila dhikrik. And he continues that with that dhikr, with that mindfulness, so we've got clarity of purpose, of intention, theme one. Theme two, delivered through mindfulness, through being present in the moment. Because if we're present, we're not worrying about the problems we had yesterday that made this problem more difficult. Nor are we concerned about tomorrow. We will fail tomorrow when we have this meeting with the boss, or when I have that meeting with my doctor. We're not worried about tomorrow. We're in the present moment. And in the present moment, we can experience the joy of qurbatan ilallah. And in that expanded awareness, we have the freedom to act wisely. Perhaps change our relationships, both with ourselves and with others. So that door to reformation, that islah, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam said was his primary mission. When he left Medina, what did he say? Why was he leaving? Islah fi ummati jaddi, the reformation of the community of my grandfather. That islah happens in the present moment, through our mindful awakening in that moment. In that moment, we find the confidence through his rahmah. Because, he continues, we have gratitude. So, when we have that awareness in the moment that yes, I can do it, because I have Allah's rahmah, shaitan would come in and say, wow, look at you, that's amazing. And then another voice says, yeah, look at me, this is great, I'm present, look how much presence I have got. Well, of course, at that moment we've lost. The presence is gone, we've just gone into a new kind of fantasy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the grace of the Imam of Islam, has provided us with an inoculation against what Imam Sajjad al-Islam calls ujb in that Dua-e-Kumail Akhlaq. And we see it here. And the greatest vaccine against ujb is gratitude, shukr. Let me cite you some of the evidence. So everything I've said so far is corroborated by empirical evidence. motivation and clarity of niyyah, purpose. They say those people who are clear about what they want to achieve, not just in the wider world, but also with their own personal journey in therapy, do much better through statistically significant tests of scales of depression, for example. They do much better when at the beginning they are clear about what they want to achieve and how. So this problem that we have in our minds, let's think, what do I want to achieve and how can I do it? What one tangible step can I take? So clarity of niyyah has been shown to work. Now it might sound obvious, but it's remarkable how little we do it. Because that's the power of the darkness of yuwaswisu fis sudur, of those whisperings upon the heart. It covers our own light of intellect from shining. Secondly, the evidence about gratitude. There was a study done in California which has been replicated elsewhere, secular study, by a professor of positive psychology who actually specializes in the psychology of gratitude. Imagine, a whole career dedicated to the empirical study of gratitude. And they set up a study whereby they had two groups of students, so it was a randomized control trial. One group was just told to get on with their lives as they did for the next 6 weeks, think about some goals that they have, and measure at the end of the 6-week period how they did. And another group was told that at the end of each week, keep a gratitude diary. And you'll notice that in the NHS-approved mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, one of the things they talk about is a cognitive diary, including a gratitude diary, because there's data to show it works. And those people who were grateful for 5 things are told, find 5 things for which you can be grateful. Notice how our psychological teachings from Imam Jafar Sadiq al-Islam teaches us to keep a cognitive diary every day, but he calls it taking account. So it's actually deeper than a simple cognitive diary. Suffice it to say that those people who found things to be grateful for were more successful in achieving their secular objectives than those who weren't. Gratitude works for fi dunya hasana, and of course it works for fil akhirati hasana according to our teachings. So having gratitude enables us. So what can we be grateful for with the problem we have? Is there anything about which we can be grateful with the problem that we're facing? Is there some aspect of inner strength it has developed? Is there some aspect of humility it has developed? We've got empirical evidence now that those people who suffer from problems, who have experienced real hardship, are more likely to be able to empathize with other people with compassion. Empathy has been a study of experimental psychology for a long time, because, of course, the post-enlightenment, if you can call it enlightenment, idea of science was that we're all selfish. There's a selfish gene. So they couldn't work out, why would this human being be compassionate to another human being? It's not in his interest. Why does he do it? Well, the more we look, the more we find that actually, it's almost as though we're hardwired for it. Anybody would think that we had a creator who gave us a fitrah. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, when we act in accordance with our fitrah, with our core psychological wiring, we do better. So gratitude is a core part of giving us a greater probability of achieving the mission for which we formed the niyyah at the beginning. Why? He says, وَأَسْأَلُكَ بِجُودِكَ أَن تُدْنِيَنِي مِنْ كُرْبِكَ, and I beseech you by your Jude to bring me closer to you. Jude being the kind of generosity that can never be reciprocated. So when he's asking for this kind of generosity, what's about to come is really important. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is setting the scene that what I'm about to ask for is huge. Because I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by that attribute of his that only he can have. It's the kind of generosity that no created entity could have. And he asks, أَن تُوزِيَنِي شُكْرَكَ, that inspire me towards your gratitude. Because it's hard. It's very easy to forget the good that we have. But when we are inspired, وَأَن تُوزِيَنِي شُكْرَكَ, when we have that inspiration of what to be grateful for, it empowers us. It helps us with what psychotherapy would call reframing. to reframe this life situation we're in from entirely negative or largely negative, look at the list of problems I have. Well, you've got problems. Wait till I tell you my problems. It's a much longer list. And then we start competing. Who's got the bigger problems? Then my ego kicks in. No, my problems are bigger than your problems. And we enter into this weird conversation that is incredibly damaging, but fulfilling in a cathartic kind of way to the ego, to the nafs, but is really damaging to our mental health. This antuziyani shukrak provides a key to unlock the handcuffs, provided we use it in that way. Find the positive within the life situation we're in, for which we can be grateful. It doesn't mean the bad thing disappears. No, it transforms our ability to engage with it. And we may even see that we might be part of the problem. God forbid that my relationship with my brother is broken down. It's all his fault. And then when I look, actually, I realize he's a pious man, and he's been actually doing good. I'm the one who hasn't been returning his calls. But I felt very justified in not doing it. But when I look, actually I can be grateful that I've got a brother who bothered to call me. If I can be grateful for that, maybe I might be inspired to return his call. Now, of course, we've got an eminent brother here. But the issue is, when we apply to the problem we're facing, the question applies. What can I be grateful for? And this is a really dangerous question. It's dangerous for our nafs, because our nafs likes to build a story about the problem, because it's such a big problem, and it's such a devastating problem. How can there be anything good about it? Well, what if there might be? And if there is one good thing about it, can we build on that? And it's that opportunity for transformation that dua provides us. So gratitude is a key part of it. But I'd like to conclude on the fourth aspect, thematically. Just hope and optimism. Being positive. A positive mental attitude is not just something that we get from coaches of American football teams. A positive disposition is a hallmark of the follower of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam, salawatullahi alayhi, is narrated to have said that the mark of a true scholar, and by the way, we've got many scholars in our community, they just don't happen to teach publicly. But they're great scholars in the home. They're great scholars for themselves. They teach the next generation. Of course, I'm referring to our mothers and our sisters, and our fathers and our grandparents who teach. One of the things they teach us is hope, particularly in the face of adversity. Now, before we go into the dua, what does the science tell us? It's remarkable that, so what psychologists have tried to do is to try and measure it. So, we love creating scales. Basically, tick boxes to then be able to say, where is an individual on a scale of 1 to 100 usually. So there's a hopefulness scale, the positive outlook scales, disposition scales. And what they find is that people who have trait positivity rather than state. So state is something temporary. That yeah, I can be positive temporarily, and then something bad happens and I go back to my sullen ways, my negative outlook as a prophet of doom. That, oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And it's all going to be horrific and it's all going to end up terribly. That catastrophizing, which is the word that psychotherapists use, is not a joke. I make a joke about it to make light of the problem. But it's a serious problem. We all engage in catastrophizing at some point in our lives, and it's really damaging. What hope does is saves us from that particular pitfall. Having a positive hope allows us to try and look for the positive that can come out of this, the growth that can come about from what is happening at the moment. Can I request the salawat so that our brothers can move forward so that we can all sit comfortably? One more, please. Let me conclude. The evidence is clear. empirically, from a secular point of view, that those people who have a more hopeful disposition do far better, whether it's in their general lives or whether it's with psychotherapy itself. Whatever you're trying to do, when you formed a niyyah, let us recap our discussion. When you formed a niyyah based on the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His power, biquwwatika, because this is the word quwwa Imam Ali Islam uses, وَبِقُوَّتِكَ الَّتِي قَهَرْتَ بِهَا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ, that I beseech you by your power through which you have overpowered everything. If I'm feeling weak, I'm tapping into power and rahmah that applies to everyone, regardless of what I think about myself, to form a clear intention. Secondly, I am grateful for what I do have in terms of resources. I am mindful in the present moment where I can achieve proximity to Allah so I don't suffer from loneliness. That illusion of loneliness evaporates in the candle of proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And fourthly, I can have hope that with His companionship, Ya sahiba man la sahiba lah, is a verse we see in Dua-e-Kumail, or the companion of one who has no companion. Ya habiba man la habiba lah, Ya tabiba man la tabiba lah, the beloved of the one who doesn't have a beloved, the one who remedies, who cures, who helps, the one who nobody else does. He's always present. So when we are mindful, and we can only achieve proximity to Allah in the present moment, when we are mindful now, and we are therefore hopeful about what we can do, then we can be confident of being able to achieve our objective. Not because of our ujb, of our arrogance, our greatness, but because of His quwwah, of His power, and through His rahmah, through His grace. Including for our spiritual progression. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, and as I recite these words, bring your problem squarely into focus. This verse is about transformation, not just change. We can, if we want to change, we can use any sources we want to. If we want to transform, if we want islah, we go to the community that gave everything for islah. He says, Allahumma la ajdu li dhunubi ghafira. Allah, I find no forgiver of my sins. So He's not denying reality, He's accepting it as it is. Wala li qabaihi satira, or anyone who can conceal my ugly deeds. Wala li shay'in min amali qabihi, no bil hasani mubaddilan khayrak, that there is nobody who can transform my ugly deeds other than you. This mubaddilan attribute is available to us. And we may want to seek this mubaddilan for the particular problem we are facing. Particularly if I am part of the problem, to change what I have done. Because we are positive, we are hopeful that the one we are talking to is who? The hope of the Urafa, Ya ghayat al-amal al-arifin, or the ultimate aim of the spiritual mystics, the Gnostics, the Urafa. The hope of those people. The hope of those who seek assistance, Ya ghiyath al-mustaghithin. And who amongst us is not mustaghithin? The one who is the repository of hope in those who are desperate for assistance. The one who is the beloved of the sincere hearts. Ya habiba qulub as-sadiqeen, the true hope of those who love. We are ilah al-alameen, jazakallah, and the Lord of all of creation. That is a premise for hope. And then, what does he ask for? He asks for the reformation of everything. So in terms of hope, the greatest conclusion we can have for our hope is to transform everything around us and everything that we have done in every way possible. He says, forgive me of all the things that I have done, and كل ذنب أذنبته وَكُلَّ قَبِيهٍ أَسْرَرْتُ وَكُلَّ جَهْلٍ. Forgive me for all the sins I've committed, for all the negative deeds I have done, all my ignorance. ظَلَمْتُ نَفْسِي. Forgive me for when I've wronged myself, which I did bijahl, out of my ignorance. And Allahumma gfirli, oh Allah, forgive me. Kulla dhanbin adnabtu, every sin I've committed. Now this idea of kulla dhanbin, and this comes after he's asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his Jude. This is hope. This is hope for not just reform, but this is hope for complete transformation, complete salvation. Allahumma gfirli kulla dhanbin adnabtu. Now, when we are locked in the negative thoughts that come in, when we seek by this idea of ultimate transformation, of ultimate hope, of change, we are reminded by his conclusion. Ya ghayat al-amal al-arifin. And then on that foundation of the arifin, irham man ra'su malihi raja. Because one of the things that Urafa have taught us, the masters of spiritual psychology, the mystics, the Urafa, is to remember that our greatest asset is hope. Irham man ra'su malihi raja. So that we remember that our greatest hope is our greatest asset. Hope is what we build the journey on. And therefore the final words allow us to free ourselves from the difficulties we're in, where he says, Ya man ismuhu dawam. We remembered the words of Imam Ali with his poem at the beginning, Dawka and Dawauka. Here we end with the same terms that we began our discussion. He says, Ya man ismuhu dawa, or the one whose name, whose remembrance is a remedy, is a treatment for us. Wa dhikruhu shifa, and whose true mindful remembrance is a cure. That is the opportunity that we have been given. And therefore we grieve at the sacrifice that it took for us to receive this spiritual treasure from which we benefit today. The pious soul who we gather to mourn, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, for the benefit of our young people, was from the best of both traditions, from the Arab tradition and from the Persian tradition. Because of course he was the son of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, but he was the son also, his mother was Shahbanu, who was the daughter of Yazdagir, the third, the last Sasanian Persian king. And he passed away at a relatively young age, around 58, passing away approximately 95 AH, having been born in 35 AH. So we're looking at a relatively young man, but a one who spent most of his adult life in the grief of what happened after Karbala.